Norit pasimainyti? Tai mainykitės.
Can you hear me too?
No.
No.
Gal geriau? Yes, sure.
Hello, everybody. Looks like we will be able to start 10 minutes after the due time. If I manage to start my tablet. I will give you the mic after. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for making it and thanks for waiting that long after your arrival. Good job as well. Congratulations. You made it both to the registration and the COVID test check. So, congratulations once again. Thanks a lot for being with us today. Thanks to the people who are following us online as well. It's nice to see everybody here. We were not sure as to who will make it today. We were not sure if the technique will work, but apparently it's working. So thanks everybody. There are many people I want to thank, so I will start with that, and then we can stop bothering you with that. Sorry. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, AID, which is a very new compliance provider. You can check them out. Thanks to them, you're going to have the opportunity to have a drink, so cheers to them. Thanks a lot to our panelists as well, who agreed to be here and share their view with us today. Thanks a lot to Rocket, who, as usual, is is hosting us, actually. So that's always nice to have a home where we can hold our event. Thanks a lot to the AML Center as well, who has been helping us and is helping us to put that together today. And thanks a lot to the ACAMS Baltic chapter. A lot of the members could not make it today, obviously because of the restriction, but thanks to them anyway. A few stuff before we start. The agenda for today is going to be very straightforward. We are going to have our panel discussion. We are going to have a small raffle afterwards, so you don't know it, but by the simple fact of registering and attending, you have the chance to win ACAMS online certificate. We will announce the name of the winner at the end of the event. After the discussion, we will have a few drinks together, so that will be the opportunity to relax and exchange a bit all together. One last news from us. Actually, after a very long period of silence, the ACAM Baltic chapter is coming back today. But also, you may all remember the ACAMS Baltic Symposium, which is coming back next year in March. And the event is going to be held after Riga and Tallinn in the previous year. In Vilnius this year, it's going to be on the 31st of March, so just mark the date. We're still not sure whether it's going to be online or if it's going to be in person, so we'll tell you that in the coming days. But what is sure is that it's going to happen, so exciting news as well. This said, the idea for today is also pretty straightforward. We've been talking a lot about exchanging information between financial institutions for the purpose of AML-CFT. What we wanted to do today is to at least try to get a more practical approach. We see a lot of developments around us. We see a lot of initiative. We see regulatory framework changing. Now we've tried to put together a lot of the stakeholders that are participating into that so that we can have this discussion and exchange this point of view. Apologies for the little adjustment. We had a few changes in the panel, which are not reflected in our presentation, so apologies for that. But this said, Erida, please.
Now I don't know, should I stand or should I sit? And I was just sharing experience that after 2 years I'm seeing people live, except Remi's store, where I'm going on a daily basis. So welcome everybody. We will Can you hear me well, right? I'm yelling now at the moment. So my name is Irida Prenskienė, and I will be leading this panel discussion. As Alex said, you know, we will try to do our best to get different angles on the topic, different opinions, and really very happy that we have everyone. Raimundas is not here with us, so don't look into the pictures. People are here, you know, all good. They are all sitting in those hot chairs. And definitely we want to hear questions, so I should be receiving those questions in my hands, and Alex will help as well to facilitate. So if you will have any questions immediately, raise your hand. We will try to do our best to collect and cover, at least during today's 50 minutes discussion, as we designed to have 15 minutes discussion and then 15 minutes for Q&A session. So I guess we can start because we are late already by 13 minutes. And technical issues starts, so 1, 2, 3. Technical issues started, and I did something with my mic, so switching. Can you hear me well? Okay, so sorry for that. So I will move with introductions for today's amazing panelists. I would say amazing. Definitely we did some prep work, I will be honest with you. We had a couple of calls all together, so met them, and very happy and very grateful, guys, for your attendance today. So where to start? Reda Stanytė is the head of ML division in the Bank of Lithuania, for those who don't know. We have Kazimieras Zavackas, with a very long board member at the Swedbank, and as well head of AML and CFT committee in Bank of Lithuania Association. And we have Rūta Bajarūnaitė from Center of Excellence, which was already mentioned by Alex. And we'll have fintech part represented by Titas Budrys, a board member at 7Cs Finance and the chairman on Fintech Hub in Lithuania. I think we can start then with variety of questions from you coming on this, but really, where to start? I already forgot what I should say and where should I start, but I think we'll start from Rūta, because we discussed briefly that it would be good to give a brief understanding for all of us and the audience what framework we have today in place, what regulatory situation we have today in Lithuania, and we will kick from there with the flow. We'll see how we will go. So, Reda. Rūta, for sure.
Yeah, I will try my mic. No? Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone who is here in person today and who is listening to us online. So I think the good starting point today would be to briefly touch upon... do you hear me well? No? Okay.
Switching.
Okay, I will try to keep it near me. Yeah, so basically, I think the good starting point is to briefly touch upon the two regulatory regimes or two set of requirements we have now when it comes to information exchange for the ML-CTF purposes. So basically, it's obvious from one side we have the ML requirements, which require to process, use, and analyze a large volume of data. Of course, for the one aim, prevention of money laundering and terrorist financing. On the other hand, we have GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which clearly sets strict requirements for the collection, the use, and the processing of the personal data. And the thing is that, and what I want to stress is that we have two different set of requirements, and they are aimed to different goal, meaning we have the GDPR, which is aimed at minimizing the use of the personal data, and we have ML requirements, which are obviously aimed at maximizing the use of the personal data, once again with the one aim, prevention of money laundering and terrorist financing. So basically we have two sets of requirements, which currently I think are the most important ones when it comes to information exchange. So to give a background about the current regime we live in, basically the regime that is in the EU, and the same applies to Lithuania as well. So we have the Article 43, the AML directive, which clearly states that the processing of personal data for ML-CTF purposes is a matter of the public interest. So we have the ground for the lawful processing. We have another provision, is the Article 39, Part 5, which basically talks more about the prohibition of disclosure when it comes to submission of STR. And there we have one exception, is basically that the financial institutions or the obliged entities, they are allowed to share information when it comes to the same customer and same transaction. So all in all, the thing is that basically the scope that obliged entities are allowed to share today is very limited. We have, as once again, same customer, same transaction. So in terms of GDPR, as I already mentioned, we have the article in the ML directive which actually states that prevention of money laundering and terrorist financing and processing data for this purpose is lawful, and it comes to the Article 6, Part 1, Point E under the GDPR. So basically, we have the public interest, and we have the broad provision, which is enshrined in the ML directive. But we do not have any provision that would actually allow obliged entities to exchange or share information between each other for the ML-CTF purposes. So to change that, today in terms of Lithuania and the framework of the Center of Excellence in Anti-Money Laundering, we've created the working group, which already started its work, and we will be working really hard the following half year, I think, trying to build and prepare the legislation change which are needed in order to enable obliged entities, or in other words, financial institutions, to exchange and share information between each other, once again, for the prevention of money laundering and terrorist financing. I think that's a very important thing to stress, that we're not talking about any other aims or goals. The only one is financial crime prevention.
Thanks, Ruta. So Kazimir is jumping, I guess, to the banking sector, and in general, what steps have been already done, and what would be your view? What are the obstacles we can face, with doing first steps, I would say?
Hi everyone, really happy to be here, and just I'd like, before I start, give a few reflections on what Ruta said. Ruta gave a lawyerish overview, no doubt it's really right. I think, first of all, we should raise question for ourselves. We are not lagging behind. It's obvious that, yeah, we're lagging behind with necessary legislation in place. And this is really a pity situation, because if we would been in discussions on this topic 5-7 years ago, probably we would never ever would have AML scandals in the Baltics, and we would have more, sustainable system on AML KYC, would have a greater awareness. No doubt that GDPR and AML are both super important pieces of legislation. No one discussing this, but looking as well from general interest, general good perspective, it's obvious that there are some interests which prevails, and looking from society perspective, the main challenge is to avoid dirty money in the system, to avoid fraudsters attacks, to make banking or financial system clear and safe. Then we're talking about these things, we need to make a compromise between what is like AML and what is like GDPR. For this reason, I think the central bank done a lot of things in this respect, initiating discussions and combining public and private interests. We have, I think we are first in the Baltics having ML Center, ML Excellence Center, and we could be as a good example for the Baltics and the Nordic countries, launching new approach, new system, that cooperation between public and private sector could lead to the better regulation, to the better understanding of ML and GDPR risks. And working together, we could find a balance, the right balance, how much we could give up on GDPR at the same time securing our banking system, securing our society and client interests. Yeah.
Yeah, so Reda, as Kazimieras already touched base, on the Bank of Lithuania role itself. So maybe you can brief us as well, what steps were taken already for the audience to understand where we are, and then moving to very, very practical aspects. So where we should all start doing this, Like, it's easy to discuss on the theoretical level that we have the framework, we started to build. What's next?
So, hello to everybody. I guess we have to understand that is a very much important question. That's why we are talking here. However, from the regulator side, I can say that it's a very complex question. It's not about only sending an Excel file from one financial institution to other institution. So, because maybe from financial institution, it looks like it is, but it's not. Because we at the Bank of Lithuania see that the complexity of this question, it's not only related with data protection, but it's also with customer protection, with data confidentiality, with confidentiality of financial institution, because they have to share with a customer base and so on. So tipping off. And it may have some effects on the de-risking as well as a financial exclusion. So that's why for regulator it's super important, to have a good and extensive and comprehensive framework for sharing information. But we understand and we very much support information sharing, and that's why we was very supporting mail center establishment. Maybe we are not the first one, because I know that Latvia also has public-private partnership, so the data and information sharing between public and private partnership or sector, it's crucial, important in having well-functioning mail regime in the country. So that's why we have the first step. So we agree that we have to move to the second step, to the private information sharing. And I really asked what we are the regulator now we're doing. So before we had many requests from one association or another association for KYC platform, for other sharing platforms. So now we have a mail center, and we are also taking part in the group that Ruta mentioned about data information sharing. So we're looking forward, and as a regulator, we want to support this framework, but to understand that it will not be easy.
Thanks, Reda. For sure, it's not easy. That's why we are here, sitting on those hot chairs, I guess. So talking about, very good point, Reda, you just mentioned balancing between what information we want to get as a market players and what still protects ourselves, from not sharing too much. So thinking about this frame, so where we need to start and what data we want to see, like fintechs, Tite, you are smiling. I really want to hear your opinion.
So first of all, hello everyone. I want to kind of support the point and react to what was said, support the point of Reda, the central bank. Basically, I don't really think it's necessary the issue with GDPR itself, because GDPR only applies to natural persons, and worst case we just agree to exchange information on legal persons, and there's no issue. At least how I see it. I think there are other issues like bank secrecy, customer protection, and everything that Reda mentioned, and I think for regulators are very important that it's done right. Although I think we've been discussing this as far as I can remember for years, and probably Kazimieras remembers this idea from very, very while ago, and I think all these issues could be overcome, and we have examples in Lithuania. So the closest example would be PRDB, which is loan database run by the central bank, and it's now moving toward ANA Credit, which will be pan-European database of all loans issued by the loan issuers. And this is accessible to other financial institutions, and we also must provide information about the loans that are issued. So, this is very good example of what could be done, and at least from our perspective, it seems it can be done fast. We just, I guess, need more support from government institutions like central bank, like Financial Conduct Authority, maybe GDPR Authority, Personal Data Inspection. And I think we are just generally also very happy that we have ML Center set up in Lithuania now. It's a first step in the long road towards achieving this exchange of information on EML and anti-terrorist financing prevention, and possibly a lot of other things related to this.
So what support we need, or Ruta, what support we can get today?
Yeah, so I think I would like to reflect a little bit maybe about our working group and to open a curtain what's happening there, what approach we're seeking for, just to give a little bit more clarity in terms of, because, information exchange is a very broad term. What kind of information we will share? What do we need actually? So basically, we are aiming at identifying situations or cases when the obliged entities will need to exchange the information. So basically, we're not talking about the broad concept here. I think it's also very important to note that it's not only about changing the law, it's also about the creating detailed procedure on how the information exchange should happen. So the thing that is said by the European Data Protection Supervisor now, for example, responding to the ML package, which will be discussed very soon next year, I think the main thing is that we should identify situations, and then we should clearly set the boundaries or clearly identify what type of information we will share for each of the situations. Another thing is that when it comes to the procedure or the description of the detailed procedure, this would help us to react quicker, because the modus operandi of the crimes are changing constantly, like every year or every month. We have fraud, we have many other different crime-related activities. So I think it's important to know that we are not aiming to put like a broad provision in the law and that's it. We are looking a little bit more forward and thinking about the detailed procedure that will actually put boundaries and put safeguards. As Reda mentioned, also to support the statement that, of course, we need to think about protecting like normal, usual people who are not involved in any crime, and so that their data would not be shared. So I think that's the main goal in terms of our SML Center, just to ensure that all safeguards, together with all stakeholders within the group, that they are put in place.
So how then to agree on the same rules or same approaches between different players? Because it's easy to say we're doing, you're doing, we're doing, but how we all would agree on same approach that we are applying while sharing information? I don't know, Kazimierz, you want to?
Super good question. And to agree on one approach, this is why we need to cooperate between public and private sector. From one angle, private sector probably could be eager to share more information, but as Reda mentioned, this could create a group of people, a group of entities which like sit outside the banking system, and this is not good to create a ghetto for persons in a broader sense. And to find the right balance, which information could be shared, which shouldn't be shared, is one of important things. Another important thing is that we will have definitely situations where persons did something wrong, and should be mechanisms as well that integrate, which would enable them to integrate back into the system. And this will be super important as well to ensure that we are not creating one-way system. We just aim to really find fraudsters, kick them out from the system. We as well need to think how to enable a system which accepts as well persons who did something wrong and been integrated. And as I said, this is still a huge work ahead. We need really the central bank and data protection authority and private sector to find the right balance on information exchange.
So, Reda, what would be your approach on the balancing itself? How this could look from? It's tough, I know.
Yeah, it's easy to say, find a right balance. You know, so that's why we, and as a regulator and the authority of data protection, we are in this group, you know, not just to have this flow that everything I can send to another institution. So because it's also a challenge on the regulator side, because we are not sharing just, you know, sending to Estonian FSA all information we have about our financial market participants, even if we have, you know, to have the same supervision. So we have agreements, we have some cases. So I think that is the way to go, and we have to have rules, as Ruta mentioned, rules when, why we can share information. So.
But Reda, we talked actually earlier before that in general we already sharing this kind of information, and you are seeing this information, right? Part of information is coming to you through the observation, through researches and so on. So we already have a lot of intelligence behind, which we kind of not saying that this is official information sharing to say so, like through the official normal channels and or technology, but from your practice, what you are seeing as a regulator, you know, what those practices, what tips you can take already from what we have in the market and maybe implement in the practice and you know, use it in the practice from today's situation.
Yeah, so as a regulator, we are gathering a lot of information from our supervised entities. However, we cannot send, you know, to other entity about one bank to another bank. But we are trying to approach sectors with money laundering and terrorist financing risks that are common maybe to all of them. We also having we collecting or we receiving complaints regarding some fraudulent activities. So in this way, we are trying also to approach obliged entity and then to communicate to the sector in some way. But of course, it's not with the names because we are not allowed. So but we see in the practice that information sharing between sector, it would help, you know, for criminals who has more information and they are sharing information and they are finding some sophisticated ways to get into the financial institution and not in one institution, another institution. So that is a practical aspect. The information sharing would maybe help to prevent crime.
And I see Kazimieras already has different opinion on this, right?
I don't have different opinion. I'd like to share some good examples and just say really a few good words. Just recently, FIU, Financial Investigation Unit, launched software which enable us to receive a feedback on reported transactions. From one angle, this is like a minimum information which we could receive as a private sector, but from another angle, which helps us really to improve our processes and see if we have any shortcomings, what we could do better, are we providing sufficient information on reported alerts. Central bank doing like one-on-one meetings, and these meetings as well help us to understand and benchmark us with the market. Central bank is not unable to reveal us data, but help us really to see how do we look in the market from their eyes. And third example, which I think is super important, is cooperation between private and public sector, and I'd like to give example of Netherlands. In response of increased fraudsters attacks on the customers, we enable to come to conclusion without huge change in existing legislation and by issuing guidelines which allows market participants to share minimum data in order to prevent fraudsters attacks. And I see that we are on a good way. We just need as well to explore possibilities don't need wait for legislation changes, and explore what we could do now, the existing framework, which would enable us really to exchange information on key areas, on the key aspects. As I said, like fraudsters, limit them from the banking system and safeguard our customers from their attacks. So these three examples gives a better understanding that we have good practices, and we have as well a room to move ahead without doing huge changes into existing legal framework.
So Kazimierz, you mentioned sharing and exchanging information. So I guess it's two aspects, right? And like, what does it mean for us to share information, and when we really need to exchange the information, just to make this clear maybe? Because it's not the same thing, right? We are sharing but not necessarily officially exchanging. So
it's a good point, and from first glance it's like two synonymous, but I would distinguish that exchange information, it's currently allowed according to ML legal framework, which allows financial institutions which are involved or have the same transaction or have the same client exchange information, and sharing information. It's a bit a broader context where we would be able really to get information about clients with whom we not having relation at the moment, but which would enable us really to make better KYC, to assess client-related risks, to prevent situations where we are, facilitating transactions related to international sanctions. So, for instance, if we have a sanctioned person in one financial institution, and we would be able really to exchange this information, to share this information with our market participants, which would really save our resources doing analysis, doing research on databases, systems, and we would really put this record into our system and would stop such transactions, not allowing really to go through our systems.
I wanted to pass to Titas and...
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from Reda and Central Bank is there are a lot of problems, besides legal problems, with exchanging this information. And for example, on one hand, you have derisking. Derisking means when some of people will be excluded from the financial sector because they become known on this, let's say, shared database. On the other hand, you have fraudsters that might learn how it works and might try to I don't know, go around it, which is very normal, and I'm sure it will happen. I just kind of think that we still need to take a leap of faith and try to do something, knowing that there will always be a risk. Same thing goes for fintech sector. I mean, central bank at some point took this leap of faith with the fintech sector. And I want to, reiterate what Kazimierz is saying. I think without public and private partnership, this is not possible. Lithuanian Bank Association have been trying to do this for, I know that this idea surfaced 10 years ago, maybe even more than that, right? And it hasn't moved. We as FinTech Association, we had this idea 1 year and a half ago. We tried to do this. We actually are still working on it. We are working with a company called OnDato, which is kind of well known, to create a database where we as members, whoever joins this exchange system, will put in some customers that we find suspicious, and then we get feedback. I still see a lot of problems there. For example, incentives. Why me as a company, especially a small company with limited resources, although I'm sure even big commercial banks have limited resources, why would I want to put and spend some of my time and put in information in this database? Because I don't necessarily get anything back. For me to get anything back, I need to be sure that, okay, I have access to it. I am sure that the data quality in the database is good enough as well. So this is, potential issues that can come from just doing this kind of exchange just among private sector only, without using public institutions to do it. And if you go to public institutions, the example I mentioned before with a loan database that is run by the central bank, it's a very good example. And I'm not saying, this is central bank territory necessary. We have FYU. FYU, FNTT, in the recent event for commercial banks, said that this year we received 30,000 STRs, suspicion transaction reports. 26,000 of them are put in a drawer, not used because we're not good enough, we're not, I don't know, maybe amounts are not big enough, we don't care about it. But for us, banks or fintechs, that data might be very interesting, very useful to decide whether customer is high risk or whether the customer is the one that we don't really want to onboard and work with. And I think, first of all, this could be a fastest, shortest way to exchange this information is just by kind of trying to get access to this FYU data, especially the data that we don't use for investigation, official investigation. And I'm sure Ruta can comment on that because she has been talking to FYU, and I'm sure there are quite a lot of issues with them to agree on this.
Yeah, if I can reflect a couple of moments, I think, in terms of Lithuania as a country, I want to give here a little bit of sort of optimistic view, is that we are not lagging. I do not think that 10 years ago that would be possible and that we could actually had the mature view to the information exchange. So Lithuania is actually one of the countries that now are driving the initiatives. We have our neighbor, Estonia. They have already changes in legislation and they started the exchange of the information for ML-CTF purposes. As Kazimieras mentioned, we have Netherlands, the PIFI protocol and the protocol for exchange of information in terms of fraud prevention. We have also in the Netherlands the initiative regarding transaction monitoring, common initiative, but it's still not able to work with the real data because they also need changes in the legislation. So I think Lithuania is actually one of the leaders today as we are talking in general here about this topic, and we are actually driving the project that would initiate and that would the law would be passed and we would have the provisions in the law regarding the ML-CTF prevention. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we talked now today a lot about the fraud, but I think we should actually think a little bit broader. Why actually in the Netherlands the exchange of information happened in terms of fraud? Because the GDPR, once again, the recital in the GDPR states clearly that processing of personal data for the fraud is matter of the public interest. So basically, and I think the gateway today to exchange information is we have the Article 6, Part 1.f, the legitimate interest. So I think this is the way how we actually could do it today to change the exchange of the data in terms of sanctions or any other crime we need. We only need the balance test so that every obliged entity would actually be involved and execute that test within the organization. So that's the second point. In terms of FIU, I think, as already Kazimieras mentioned, the feedback button, we call it. I think that's a fantastic initiative. And we are actually, I think, starting to enable the process of feedback sharing, what we did not have before. We are having the STR sessions, the training sessions I would call. We will very briefly have another one where the fintech sector would also be involved. And I think, we are only getting started. So I think we should keep the same pace because for the private sector, the feedback from the FIU or from the regulator, that's crucial. Because how do they know how to improve themselves when they don't know where are the challenges or the obstacles or the drawbacks on the STRs, as for example. So I think we have a lot of way for improvement here, and the ML Center is really working towards the enabling the whole feedback process from the FIU and trying to make it as efficient as possible.
Thanks so much. So to address your question, I think, which is good to be discussed, so why we as a market players should be sharing and what incentive we should get out of that. Reda, any comments, why fintechs should be doing this? Yes, we have Kazimieras from the huge bank, right, and the bank association, and he might have totally different view than Titas, knowing he represents fintechs. So it's two different angles, you know, the scope of banks and the scope of fintechs, and the number of customers definitely differs, you know, between those two type of players. Any thoughts, insights on this?
So we have not only two sectors. On my table, I have 7, I guess. So there are many more entities that also could be included in the scope of information sharing. I don't know why I have to share information. I guess that is the question one CEO of the obliged entity can raise tomorrow. Just because you are thinking about the laws, you have to be compliant with laws to prevent crime in general. But also, I think entities has to understand that reputation is also very important. Because as a customer, I will go there where I think that my money will be safe. So compliance cost is huge, I think. So I don't know if you know somebody wants to share. So just the matter of time when you know. They will understand that the information sharing is not just a simple exercise. It protects not other, it protects you also. So
I'd like to reflect as well on your question. I think your question was posed probably not correctly. Excuse me. I think it's not about fintechs. We should talk about why we are not sharing information cross-border. And we could be proud, Lithuanians, as Ruta said, yeah, we're not lagging, excuse me. We should share data cross-border. We're a region, we're not a country. Our business has links with Estonia, Latvia, Sweden, Germany, Poland. And okay, we will set up, let's imagine we'll set up nice and cute system and we will share data within the country. What we'll do with international payments, with separate payments which goes outside Lithuania. So in order not to lagging behind, we should think already one step forward, push one step forward and think how we will do, how we'll manage and share data. Not within the country, but within the region, at least within the region. I would expect that we'll focus on this and include our colleagues from Estonia, Latvia, and Sweden in our project and align and create system which enable us to do this.
Thanks, Kazimieras. So, Ruta, you wanted to jump on
no,
Netherlands example?
What can I say? I can only support this, and I think that's all. That, of course, I mean, we need to think one step forward. Exchange of information in Lithuania, it's definitely not the ending point of the... I think we're all waiting for the ML package to be discussed. We are hopeful that maybe we will see the provision that would allow actually to exchange information for obliged entities for ML-CTF purposes. So, you know, a lot of interesting events waits us next year.
And guys, we touched base today actually a couple of times, but can we come back to the de-risking then question, you know, because we just said and mentioned this a couple of times, but how to avoid this? And what we should consider, you know, prior implementing this framework, prior establishing the rules.
Thanks. I see Rada giving me mic and to start. The topic not the easiest one, and if I start, I agree that we can't create, and I mentioned we can't create ghetto for people, companies which have been excluded due to several risks, AML, sanctions, terrorist list. We already see trends that these people, if we are not included into financial system, we could create a social problem, a social bomb in society. So integration back mechanisms into financial system is necessary. And when we're talking about data exchange, definitely we need to think on mechanisms which would enable for such people to maintain account. And we have plenty of examples. Let's imagine the person is coming from high-risk country, let's take Iran, and for natural individuals from such countries, it's super hard really to open and maintain account. But if we would not provide such possibility, we would be certain outskirts and would not be integrated fully. We would not have possibility to buy services, pay for the rent, etc. The same is for companies as well, and even for fraudsters, for people who been used for fraudsters purpose. We became moles, provided the accounts for like transferring money. We need to think about mechanisms which would enable to integrate them back. Maybe with limited functionality, with limited payments, with limited services, but definitely we need to think about this.
Reda, you wanted to jump in on this, and I think on tipping off as well, we haven't touched this, but...
Yeah, so as regards to Derisking, so it's not a topic in Lithuania, it's a topic globally, and FATF, EBA is also working on this topic. The Bank of Lithuania, last year we had many complaints from the customers regarding restrictions, regarding termination of accounts. So we saw that it's important to think and to analyze what is the scope of Derisking in Lithuania. So now we are in a final stage, and hopefully in December we can share our results of this project. But I'm not sure if we have this problem in Lithuania. Maybe sometimes we noted that it's customers that still need to understand that prevention is important, and they have to provide questionnaires and information and so on. So also it's working with the customers and on our side as the regulators, but also on the financial institutions. So.
Thanks. So you're not seeing this as a huge challenge for...
I'm not saying anything at the moment because we have to finalize our conclusions.
Yeah, I'll add on the risking part, although this is not a topic, but I don't think it can be avoided. I think the whole AML idea and all the directives, the further we go, all the regulation pushes away even the smallest possibility of money laundering, and those people or companies that are excluded from financial system, they are usually excluded for some reason, smaller or bigger. But as always, even from very, very old days, people who actually commit fraud or do some illegal activities, they will find the ways around whatever we put out there. For example, cryptocurrencies, or I don't know, some other countries in the world are more open to higher risk of their financial institutions licensed there, or some of the countries don't even have license in a country, so it's not licensed services, we can operate there, and there will always be countries like that, financial institutions like that, or other instruments like cryptocurrencies. So I don't think de-risking itself is the big issue or the biggest issue, at least nowadays, right? AML itself is probably a lot bigger issue. Or exchange of data related to ML and CTF is some kind of issue because we cannot do it, or we don't know how to do it.
And actually we are getting some questions from the audience already, and we're just about the time to jump into those. So I guess, Ruta, you mentioned the Netherlands example, and we are getting the question why we should not be using good practices and copy and pasting kind of examples from, for example, in UK on the National Fraud Database, sharing in terms of the fraud prevention. So it's a good example, right? Why we just can't copy-paste and start from fraud, for example, only?
Yeah, so I think we can copy-paste. And yeah, we have the UK. I think they are like the most advanced example in general in terms of information exchange. The Netherlands, the same thing. And I mean, we're not saying that we should not do that. And I think there might be initiatives to have some temporary solutions. And really, the solution that is now implemented in Netherlands is the way we could go. But as we are talking today here, we are looking a little bit more forward because, it's not only about the fraud. I know that fraud is the most like current topic now, and it's everywhere. It's not only Lithuania, and it's basically within the Europe. The numbers are rising, and the fraudsters are coming to different institutions. But let's not stick only to fraud. But I'm supporting the examples that are put, and I don't know. Maybe we'll come with a temporary solution that is, of course, needed because we need to react now, not after 6 months.
And quick reflection from my side. Let's not be a copy-paster, but let's create our own solution.
To take good examples from vehicles already invented and just to make them even better.
Of course. It's already done. Let's do better.
Let's do better, yeah. So talking about the better, and Tita, you touched base a bit, not to answer you the question maybe, but it's also in one of the questions in general. So who is then responsible for creating the technology? It's very basic, right? We need technology. So what would be the steps here? I don't know. Someone could cover, and
I think I'll just repeat myself. Private-public partnership, I think it's necessary here because anyone can create this technology, anyone can join it. It hasn't been done so far for some reasons, right? And that's what we are lacking now. I think more willingness maybe from public sector. As a private sector, it's three of us, I think from different parts, at least two of us from private sector, from different parts agreeing on this, and we clearly want to do this and move forward with this, and we are happy that Ruta is working on this, and we hope that central bank supports it, and we also hope that Financial Conduct Authority will at some point get on board with this, and Personal Data Protection Authority. I think we just,
so
if we come together, we can, what do we need? That's
money,
what I'm
resources.
saying. No. Well, I think FYU needs money and resources from the ministry to maybe be on board with this. But for us, I think we have the willingness, and we just need cooperation from public sector.
We need to be probably much more clear. In order to create any software, we need a clear regulatory framework because it's like money, resources, etc., which is costly. And in order to create something valuable, we need clarity what we would like to create and that this created thing will be functioning. So it's super important that regulators, supervisors would, and unfortunately we don't have Raymond that's here from data protection, but I think clarity from the regulators would enable Tita's colleagues to think quickly what could be done in respect of this and what kind of solutions we could implement as SAP.
So Reda, what clarity we can give today or tomorrow or 2022 then?
Tough questions for regulator, as always. So I think, so my message is that we support information sharing, and that's why we have AML Center, because Bank of Lithuania was very much supporting and trying to open many doors for this. So we have this, so I think it's the good direction. So next step, so that's why we also in the group trying, to push, but of course, at the same time to balance, because we have human rights, we can customers and so on. So, so support from regulator is already here.
Good. So I guess with that, we will turn. We are about time to finish. I don't know, maybe some last remarks, guys, from you, as we would need to jump to the questions from the audience, which I guess we have, right? Like everyone's, tons of questions. So really, like final remarks, and we can jump to.
Yeah, my final remark would be that, we as a fintech sector are very happy that ML Center has been set up. We are looking forward to the day when we will be a member of that ML Center, and I'm sure it will come. And I think, the purpose of this center is, at least one of the purposes, is to make this data sharing among financial institutions, among financial sector, or anyone else who has to follow AML laws and regulation possible. And I think in the future, at some point, it will become possible. It's just some solving of legal and non-legal problems, which I'm sure we are doing every day, and we just look forward to it.
Ruta.
Yeah, so I think from the ML Center perspective, we will be continuing to drive the initiative and working on the legislative package. We will definitely not forget the fintech sector, and they will be also involved in the whole process. And my third point is that we are actually challenging the technology firms if they are available, or do they have right solutions for the information exchange approaches. We are open for discussions. If there is a solution out there, we will definitely consider it.
Thank you, Ruta. Kazimierai.
My takeaway from today's discussion is that we should not put ourselves as like a winners or what we achieved a lot, and just think what we could do better, not copy-paste. Once again, I will repeat myself, and think broader, not within Lithuanian country boundaries, but think what could be our input in the region, at least in the region. And this could make us our country as real ML excellence center. So, and we will be working hard on this, Ruta, yeah?
So now, yeah, promise is already being shared. So closing the discussion, Reda, what would be your promise? No, kidding, really, what would be your key highlight?
I very much agree with Kazimierai's. We have to be creative. And as we want to be a center of ML excellence, that already is what is shared at AMLA. We are willing that it will be situated here. So let's start with the ML Competence Center and with the first steps we have, and then let's move forward.
Great. So with that positive note, I would say, right, very positive note, I would like to thank you all guys for today's discussion. Yes, applauses first of all. We don't do this during the Teams or Zoom meetings, so do it live, applauses are always nice. And yeah, I don't think so that we have other other questions online, so I would go then to audience, and Alex will promise to help us with moving the mic around, and collecting those questions or just ideas, It's really also not only questions, but ideas from Kristina.
So nice, you know my name, you remember my name. My question would be for Ruta, I guess. You mentioned earlier that you're working on certain scenarios or cases when information sharing would be expected, so to say. I know it's work in progress, it's not finalized yet, but could you share more specifics?
Yes, so as we already mentioned today, fraud is of course one of the situations. We also have proliferation financing, we have sanctions, we have abuse of legal entities, meaning shell companies. We have in general, we are moving towards the nominees and the abuse of the legal entities, the forms of the legal entities. What's more? Yeah, so I think mainly we are trying to target the main, the main crime that is currently active. And as already mentioned before, I think it's important to mention that the situations that we will identify now, they might change within a couple of years, so we will try to react as quick as possible.
Thank you, Ruta, so much. Thank you, Kristina, So who's next? Alex, you seems like you're on vacation, you're just chilling.
I do have a question, actually.
You should run, from one question to another.
I will be super rude and I will ask a question myself since
For sure.
It's probably a question for the FIU, for the FNTT though, but since you're here, I'm going to ask it to you. We've been mentioning the challenges of going cross-border. So obviously beyond our ecosystem in Lithuania, we need to exchange situation cross-border. We're not doing transaction within Lithuania, we're doing it cross-border. We talked about the technological challenge as well. We talked about the data integrity, so basically the fact of validating the data that we put in the system and that we get out of the system. And I thought, what about leveraging something we have already? We have this Go AML platform that is being used by different FIU in Europe, notably by our colleagues in Latvia, which is basically a mean for FIUs to exchange information more than they do already, because once again, the technological aspect is lagging behind. Would the fact of opening this platform, this GoML platform, to market participants, could this be a solution rather than trying to reinvent something, to recreate some process? What do you think?
Alex, you're referring more on the technology sharing. It's on technology usage, right? Or like GoML?
Yeah, using this GoML platform for market participants. So basically behind just the, beyond the FIUs.
Could it work or not?
I think we need to test. I'm not familiar, and frankly speaking, I can't answer now, but any solutions available in the market, we're doing like a close screening, what is like available, and probably Ruta, we could organize the ML center sharing of this platform and provide possibilities to market participants, to our main stakeholders, assess functionality and then come back.
And we got, thanks Kazimierai, and actually we've got very similar question from the audience on Estonian ML-bridge solutions. So Ruta, maybe you would be an expert here?
Yeah, so we have already seen the demo.
Nice.
Already during the summer. So they are like a potential way and the potential technology that is out there and that is actually now being used with the real data. So we are not excluding them as an option, of course.
So Tadej, I hope we answered your question, because this is Tadej's question and proposal, you know, to maybe use this technology for Lithuania, or at least to discover what opportunities we would have. Do we have any additional questions? Or everybody is waiting for that happy hour thing to start? Yes, Alex, you should run. No rush, yeah.
Okay, so thanks a lot for the discussion. It's indeed many questions and challenges mentioned, and we have this discussion for a long time in the banking sector, because I'm myself from the banking sector. And I had this question, which is, I don't know, unfortunately to the regulator, and I know that it's not for Reda probably to fully respond, but I was just interested whether there is any discussion ongoing now in this like regulatory circle and perhaps in the European Union as well, because this topic that we discussed, we know that there are pieces of information and certain sets of information we would like to share from the bank's perspective, and there are a lot of questions which information we could share, but actually a big part of information that we would like to share is like pretty obvious that we need to share it. So it's like fraudulent accounts, for example, fraudsters' data, or we haven't touched international sanctions area, but there's also an important part of data which is necessary to share within the market in order to ensure compliance with the sanctions requirement. And that information, it is already, regulators already have it. So it's not even so much for the market participants to share, but just to have access to that information for everybody, not only for those who have reported that information to regulators. So I was also just interested to hear whether there is any discussion. We know that in AML Center we're trying to connect different regulators, but do you have any of those kind of discussions amongst the regulators as well?
So As regards to regulators, we have instrument, so it's colleges, IML colleges. Then we share information about a particular entity. And last week we had a meeting with the Nordic Baltics regulators, and we all agree that information sharing across sector it's a challenge. And even now with a new regulation on a EU level, so if we see AML regulation, so there is no opportunity that we can share information because of AML, because also there are some notes regarding data protection. And of course, I don't know how it will look, the final text and the final regulation, but I think there will be a big challenge to agree across countries and across regulators. So we are discussing, but we have no common agreement on this, unfortunately.
Anybody else?
I wanted to thank you for your question, and thank you, Reda, for not so positive note to end. I hope it's not the last question, you know, because we finished with the word possibly and hopefully. No? There is one.
So I work on operational risk, and basically my question is the quality of data. So let's say we have incompetent company which says this customer is high risk. And then we have a competent company saying, well, maybe it's not. So how we are going not to reject this perfectly good customer when it comes to a good company because someone deemed them as high risk? Because to me, I think we need to have the evidence-based approach for that. So we need evidence this is a high-risk customer. But if it's just opinion because the cultural background of the customer is different, then I think this is a big risk.
Really good question. I think when we're talking about information sharing, we're not talking about sharing opinions or rumors. Let's imagine that there is a rumor in the market and I'll try to share within the market. So we could go crazy with this all rumors. It should be about something real, and therefore all data should be verified and checked against records within registries. So your question is straight to the point. We are not going to create a framework for rumor sharing. And if it's a rumor, it should be confirmed. Like very similar regulation is already in place regarding investment services. If there is rumors in the market, you need to prove this as a fact, or you need to come to the public and say that it was rumors and make clear for everyone due to transparency regulation. So the same should be in AML KYC sanction framework where we have rumors, we have to prove this, and only then after verification we could share among others.
I'll add. Very good question, and I think it's rather simple answer. This database can only be advisory. It's not sanctions list that prevents you legally from opening or engaging with the client. And it's only advisory, and it's only up to you or up to the company or up to KYC compliance officers to evaluate the data that you see in this database, including evidence or lack of it. And if you see no evidence, it's up to you to make a kind of informed decision in this case to move ahead with the client and deem him maybe not high risk as someone else did. And I'm sure even nowadays every company has different client risk evaluation approach, and it's probably natural that it will be the same way. And this is only advisory data and database.
Thank you so much. We have the mic in same hand, so good. So thank you guys once again very much. And if we don't have any additional questions, so we really would like to spend upcoming hours to continuing those discussions without mics and without those hot chairs because they're already getting hot. So, so we already need to stand up. So thank you very much for joining today's panel, for spending time, and we're inviting you now to get some refreshers.
Yes, indeed, we have a last little item before, which is a happy item as well. So first, thanks everybody. I guess we can warmly applaud.
More applauses.
And now I will ask innocent and probably you, Erida, to pick a number between 1 and 80 so that we select our winner for the ACAM certificate.
So it would be 2, 4, 5 of us. So it's 6. Sorry, so 6. Number 6.
So that you know my methodology, so that nothing is blurry, I'm going to select someone. If this person is not in the room, this person won't be selected. So I'm taking the closest one, which is Ruta, so that will not work. Select another number so that